I will do this tomorrow.
I'm too tired to start today.
I can't concentrate right now.
I don't feel motivated enough to start.
I'll wait until I feel more inspired.
The dog ate my homework.
Good one. What does all this sound like, John?
Someone making excuses?
Close. Try again.
Someone who is procrastinating?
Hey, ding, 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 ding. Correct. You get a gold star, John. This is our topic today, conquering procrastination. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. Hey, welcome back to the show. As you might be aware, procrastination is a son of a bitch. It has debilitating physically, emotional, and psychological effects. It gets in the way of countless dreams. Why is it so easy to procrastinate and so easy to say tomorrow? Well, John and I have your back. We're going to tackle this topic today to help you wake up to procrastination, to prevent you from wasting more time, more of your precious time, and to help you overcome it. But let's take a little detour for a second. Hey, you want to be part of the a deeper part of the Men Talking Mindfulness ecosystem? Grab your phone and simply put in the text line 33777 and text MTM to 33777.
Do it now.
And see everything that we're doing.
Don't procrastinate.
Yeah, do it right now, right? Yeah, exactly. MTM to 33777, no procrastination. And you'll see everything that we're doing. You'll learn that we have a summer live meditation course beginning on June 23rd. And Chris Norris is actually going to, one of our friends of the show and a fellow cognitive fitness and meditation teacher. Chris Norris is going to be teaching this summer session with myself. And you can find out more, again, texting MTM to 33777 or head to mentalkingmindfulness.com. John, welcome back. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into that opening practice, and then we're going to dive in and pick apart procrastination.
Indeed. A simple one breath grounding practice. So let's go ahead, find our bodies, find our feet, and let's begin by exhaling. Holding empty at the bottom, noticing that feeling of emptiness. Deep breath in, into your belly first, then into your chest, all the way up. Hold and release. 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 All right, let's get into this, man. So I know we've broken this show into several segments to kind of make sense for our guests, or not for our guests, for our community. So, as we've done in the past, it's always good to define what these words mean. We hear them all the time. I think most people understand generically what procrastination is, but let's just jump in with a definition. So, procrastination is defined as the act of unnecessarily and voluntarily. So unnecessarily and voluntarily delaying or postponing something despite knowing there may be or even will be negative consequences. What do you think about that, Will?
Well, I think it's interesting that there's a knowing involved here. Like we're doing something deliberately to avoid some sort of discomfort. From our research, it shows that procrastination is heavily linked to stress and anxiety. Sometimes, also we have here, and I know the feeling of procrastination, like it leaves me feel guilty, inadequate. It brings a low self-esteem to myself as well. So it's not just the act of procrastination that is extremely debilitating. There's the jet.
Yeah,
just so everyone knows. That's incredible.
Right
John
before.
was telling us. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. So the Air Force Academy has graduation tomorrow, and this my office, my recording studio, if you will, is just down the road from the Air Force Academy, and they've got the Air Force Thunderbirds doing their rehearsals for tomorrow. Earlier, we had a B-2 bomber flyover, but you wouldn't have heard that. But now they've got the F-16 Falcons, or as the Falcon drivers call themselves, Viper drivers. They're doing flyovers, and you're going to probably hear them several times through the show.
I know. I mean, I thought like there's no way it's going to be louder than the traffic on my street. but that is
It's
freaking really
freaking
loud.
loud, dude.
I'm like, God damn. So we might have to take some pauses, everybody, during this episode
We're
and
just gonna
listen to our tax
procrastinate.
dollars. Yeah, just listen to our tax dollars flying right over, and to get ready for the.
It's the sound of freedom, baby. That is the sound of
Yes, the
freedom.
sound is. You're right. It is the sound of them freeing our tax dollars. I'm just kidding. Sound of freedom. Sound of freedom. But yeah, let's get in this, John. Wasting no more time with
Yeah.
procrastination. So,
So you're talking
so
about
what else?
guilt a little bit there,
Yeah,
and you know
yeah,
how
yeah.
procrastination makes you feel.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's a big feeling associated, lots of feelings associated with stress, with procrastination, and one of the big ones that really contributes heavily to procrastination is when you're stressed, you're highly inclined to procrastinate a little bit more, or maybe procrastinate even more than you already have. Um, and it's like, tell me about the stress, John, that you experience and how it leads to your procrastination, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of overwhelm initially, quite often
Mm,
with procrastination when I get a task, or whether even if I assign myself a task, whether that's a work task, whether it's a personal goal, you know, dieting, um, exercising. Those are some big ones, and
mhm.
I keep telling myself I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get to it later. You know, one of the big ones for me anyway is I I've gotten out of waking up early to exercise because I've started prioritizing my sleep. And I've tried to make a concerted effort to exercise during the middle of the day, but quite often that will lead to me saying, okay, I'll do it at lunch. And then lunch comes along, and then I say, you know what, I'll do it after work, in between work and going home. And then inevitably, not always, but quite often, so I guess inevitably isn't quite the right word, but quite often, I'll end up not doing it. And then I go
Yeah.
home and I beat myself up for not having done it. And then I say, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
As
Right.
was it Molly Carmel, who came on or
Oh.
to
Yeah.
speak about
Breaking
sugar?
up with sugar.
Yeah, breaking up
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
sugar.
Hmm.
She spoke about the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance in between, you know, actually thinking
Mm.
about doing something and then doing something, and the guilt that's associated during that time, like the difference between
Yeah.
actually thinking about it and then doing it, that guilt that's built up. But not only that, what I've found is the guilt makes me think about the all or nothing dial. And I talked about this a little bit in our retreat last week or the week before.
Mm. Mm.
You know, if I'm not exercising today, then I'm going to go eat, you know, a pizza and a gallon of ice cream. Not literally,
Right. Wow.
but you know,
It
I'm
goes.
gonna
It goes the opposite way,
it goes
right?
the
It's
opposite way.
crazy.
So like
Yeah.
instead of working toward my goal, what I actually end up doing is not only being guilty about not working towards it, but then I think, you know what, I'm going to take steps back away from it. So I think that's some of what really we struggle with when we're doing this procrastination.
Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience this morning. Like I had set one of the things that I do in order to. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. In order to prevent procrastination, is really sitting down for just like 5 minutes. Before I go to bed. The night before, I start the next day, and I just block out my schedule,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And last night I was there. I'm like, I'm gonna get up, and I'm getting up at 4:30 still. I missed it like the last week or so because it was kind of an odd week, and I really wanted a little more sleep. But I'm like, I'm gonna hit the gym at 5 a.m. until 6 and this and that, and then sure enough, it did not happen. And I am gonna do it later. But what got in the way is like I got up at like 2:30 in the morning, hit the bathroom, and then I noticed it was 2:30. And then I just continually laid there in bed and just like, and then, my mind starts racing. I'm like, oh no, I'm like, I didn't get all my proper rest, and I need to, I have a show today, and I like to be super fresh and rested for the show. So I, stay nice and like clean and sharp. And then what happens is like, I did not get to the gym today in the
Mm.
morning. I am going to go later today, around like 4:30. But I just begin to put all sorts of different excuses, all sorts of different reasons, like why. I was like, well, I need to do this for the show. I need to get this thing done. I need to like, this is important, before working out. And I just put all these excuses in front of, me getting to the gym, and then also live, which I really annoys me. And then the rest of the day, I kind of have this subtle guilt or shame that we talked about earlier about not getting to the gym. And I think it's amazing how that guilt, shame, that stress can kind of festers with you and then starts to fuck with you,
Yeah.
and really begins to like work in the background. And that's like that stress is a big part of why most people continually procrastinate, because I don't know, it's just like it's a really nefarious and destructive relationship between stress and procrastination.
Yeah, and not just stress and procrastination, but quite literally fear, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
fear of failure, maybe even
Mm.
the fear of success, that fear of imperfection. That's one of my big ones, right?
Yeah.
I've talked
Yeah.
about
Right.
that fear of imperfection in the past. Um, yeah, I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again for those listeners who haven't heard. But in SEAL training, you do this one thing called rock portage, and rock portage is where you row your inflatable boats out as a boat crew. And as an officer in training, I was a boat crew leader, and I row this boat out past the waves, and then the goal is to turn the boat around and then row it back in and ride the waves and landed on this jetty of rocks. And this jetty of rocks is right outside the Hotel
Mm.
del Coronado. And it's a beautiful area. And during the daytime, when you do this landing, there's a whole bunch of tourists who come out and watch. And it's kind of, you feel like Superman doing it during the daytime. But then you do it about 12 hours later when it's the middle of the night, it's dark, there's no tourists out there. And my fear of failure or my fear of imperfection got in the way, and I procrastinated in the moment. So we row our boat past the waves, and we're sitting there waiting, and my men turn around and like, hey sir, are we gonna go? I'm like, hey guys, we're waiting for the perfect wave. And all these other boats catch the waves that are coming, whatever waves they may be, and they end up crashing on the rocks, and it sounds like all sorts of hell breaking loose. You hear men screaming and kind of being hurt, and you can
Yeah.
barely see, because we all have these chemical lights, the chem lights on the boats. You see these lights kind of getting thrown up on the rocks because you can't really see what's happening.
Damn.
And I'm waiting, and then finally I see the perfect wave, or I can at least feel that the perfect wave is coming, and I'm like, all right boys, here we go. And we ride this perfect wave perfectly, and we land it perfectly on the rocks, and I'm all like gung-ho thinking that I've done something awesome. And then I realize I hear from behind the rocks these instructors yelling, hey Mr. McCaskill, where the hell have you and your boat crew been? So
Mm.
now I'm delayed, right? I've procrastinated enough, kind of putting off this failure, or potential failure, potential imperfection. And
Yeah.
I say back to the instructors, well, instructor so and so, I was waiting for the perfect wave, and that didn't go over too well. The instructors yell, "Oh, you think combat is perfect? You think the battlefield is going to be perfect? Nothing is ever fucking perfect." And then I
Yeah.
end up getting punished for my fear of failure, my fear of imperfection, my procrastination, quite literally, quite frankly. And I wasn't being punished alone. I was being punished with my men right by me. And so my
Wow.
procrastination actually led to their being physically punished. But it was that, coming back to that fear of imperfection, that's the fear and
Yeah.
anxiety that we quite often feel about this task that's at hand. Again, whether it's a task that's been given to us or a task that we've given to ourselves, it's that fear and anxiety of failure or imperfection.
Yeah, I see that a lot in what we teach, John. So whether I'm teaching a yoga class or whether somebody's, is thinking about taking a meditation course or thinking about even trying something new, and could be a very masculine thing, if you will, is that if I can't do it perfect and right the first time, even though I've never done it before, or I've only done it, or thought about it, or maybe tried it one time, there might be a decreased inclination of doing that particular task because of that need to to be perfect. And think about also what you mentioned there, John. It's like, uh you know who are you when you're not being watched? You know what I mean? Who are you when you don't have that audience there,
Mm,
to kind of like witness your attempt, which can obviously lead to even more procrastination if you're kind of have some social anxiety or something like that. But how often are we preventing ourselves from doing something just because we want to get it right, just because we feel like, and I guess it just comes from such a young and deep programming, from school about getting the A's and like,
right.
being the smartest person in class, and always, and the fear of failure that brings, and the fear of taking risks that lead to probably an increased likelihood of failure because you're taking a risk and trying something new. And then we just, instead of trying that one thing that we've, I talked about in the beginning, like countless dreams, that kind of, that like never are manifested because this perfection is a big one.
Right.
Perfection is definitely something that gets in the way.
Yeah, I think there's a saying like fear has killed more dreams than anything else, and
Right.
that fear of failure, but also the fear of looking stupid. Right. We have a
Yeah.
we also have a saying in the teams is do things something like this. I'm gonna fuck it up now, but it's something like you know do things well, but if you don't do them well, look good doing it.
Yeah.
It's a
Interesting.
joke, but that there is a sense that we have to look good doing things, right? Like, I have a massive fear
Mm.
of dancing. That's probably my biggest fear on the planet. Like
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
people, their biggest fear is speaking publicly. No problem. I
Mm.
can speak up in front of an
Yeah.
audience. Yeah, I mean, my heart races and everything, but I love it. I enjoy that, and I will stand up in front of an audience of hundreds and speak no problem. But if you
Right.
ask me to dance in front of one person, my
Wow.
heart will jump out of my chest, and it's that fear of looking stupid. Like, what do I do with my hands, right? that kind of
Yeah.
feeling. But it's that low self esteem with regards to dancing that causes
Right.
me to procrastinate in dancing. Like,
Yeah.
I won't go take lessons because I don't want to even look stupid in the lesson, which comes back to your yoga. And like, I want to be
Yeah.
perfect when I step in for a lesson. Of course, I'm not going to be fucking perfect on my lesson,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. That's
But
just never the way it is.
right, yeah, and then there's also what else leads to procrastination is feeling that things are boring, right? Boring,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like
frustrating.
mundane tasks.
Yeah, oh, for sure,
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
mundane. Hey, there's something better that I can be doing when quite often when that something better is us doom scrolling, right? Like, hey, I've got
Right.
this massive task to do, but what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to scroll through social media, and unless you're watching Men Talking Mindfulness, then you could be doing something
Yeah.
better.
Stop and listen if you're
Yeah,
watching Men Talking
that's
Mindfulness right
right.
now.
That's right.
And that's one thing, like part of the procrastination and like the task aversion, we shift to something like doom scrolling on social media because it gives us, it sounds like it's absolutely what is counterproductive, and it sounds ridiculous, but there is a temporary I feel good about myself, or I'm doing
Yeah,
something that makes me happy. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, I get stuck on X, Twitter, kind of way too often, and I'm trying to find a way to like, what I want to do, John, instead of going on Twitter in the middle of the day, even for 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, I want to get on Substack, right, and start growing our subscriber list on
Right.
on Substack. You know what I mean? That's something more productive, but it's
Shameless
not as
plug
sexy.
there. Hey,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
not subscribed on Substack, check us out.
Yeah, yeah, Men Talking Mindfulness. But it's not as sexy, or it doesn't feel as good to like, oh, I got to, I'm gonna get on Substack and work a little bit. Whereas like it's just that mindless, like short-lived, feel good,
It's a
yeah,
dopamine
doom
hit.
scrolling. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly, there you go. Yeah,
you
so you
get
got to play with
dopamine
your,
out of
yeah,
playing on social media
hmm
versus what the ironic thing is we can get a massive dose of dopamine by actually doing the thing, right? Doing the
right,
thing that we're procrastinating on. If we do it,
right,
right? Going to the gym, like actually going and doing that, or
right,
accomplishing at least a portion of this massive task that's overwhelming. But hey,
right,
as you knock down a portion of this task from work or whatever, that can feel good. And the ironic thing is that we seek these instant gratifications, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but we seek
Yeah.
instant gratification over the one that's going to require a little bit of work. Um,
Mm.
the doom scrolling, the um, not going to the gym, and instead of going to the gym, driving to the nearest convenience store and picking up a Slurpee or whatever,
Yeah.
these dopamine
Smoking a
hits.
joint.
or,
Smoking,
or yeah, or
smoking a
that.
joint. It's like, fuck, I'll just like
Yeah.
hang out and get high and like,
Yeah, and
lay on the couch.
talking about feeling overwhelmed, right? The that that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
one bite at a time. But when you look
Mm.
at the whole elephant, you stand back, you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is ginormous. So you think, you know what, I can't eat this thing, right? Obviously, we're talking metaphorically, but um, when you break it down into the little digestible one bites at a time, that is much easier. And then by accomplishing those single bites, that's when you're going to get that dopamine hit, and you're going to start to feel better. You're going to start working towards that ultimate goal. So I think that's another piece that we all struggle with, is just seeing that giant task and feeling
Right.
overwhelmed.
Yeah. And also, I mean, also like, yes. And part of the ways to overcome that is like, how breaking that task down into chunks.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, not over or underestimating the time it's going to take to complete that task. And if you're, looking at, writing a book as just like the whole thing of like writing a book, like, I mean, that's a massive task that you're undertaking. You're probably underestimating or maybe even overestimating the amount of time that it can take to write that book. But it's like, what about writing the outline to begin? Or what does it mean to, like, what are the first steps in whatever you're thinking about right now that you're procrastinating on? What's the first most basic step? And sometimes it's just sitting down and making some time to I forget, it's not Pascal, it's Goethe, I believe he says, it's like, just put the first sentence on the page, or put the first brush stroke on the canvas, and then sure enough, just by taking that first step, by putting those first words on the paper, you just are naturally, you kind of started a process,
Right.
and you're more inclined to show up and continually work through that painting, or work through that thing you're trying to write, or maybe you're trying to build a shed in your backyard or something like that. It's like, why not go look at
I
how
think
much the lumber is going to
I think
cost or
you're
something
talking to
like that.
Bobby with that shed, right?
Yeah, right.
Bob,
Bobby, if you're listening,
Bobby,
how's the
Bob,
shed, by the way, Bobby?
and Bobby
Because
said, we won't name your last name here, Bobby, but you know who
yeah.
you are. When we texted him
Yeah.
earlier this morning, we're like, hey, check out our show on procrastination. He said, I'll listen later.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe tomorrow, right? But Bobby, when you do listen to this, I hope that, because we saw the shed last year, John,
Yeah, we
remember?
did. We did.
And it was looking pretty good. The foundation was down,
Yeah.
so I think maybe a half a wall was up. But yeah, I mean, just one step at a time, and that's like, and it's such like what's so important about procrastination and mindfulness. It's like when we get
Mm-hmm.
mindful, we become conscious of what's getting in the way emotionally is a big one. What is the resistance that's getting in the way with the thoughts, the feelings, or there's some sort of physical obstacle that needs to be removed first, in order for you to properly take on and do that task. And once you get out of the emotional realm, get out of the physical realm as far as obstacles, and it's just like, and you begin to clear the path, right? Because you're also actively doing something, instead of making yourself feel good by doing some task, or not even a task, just doing something that it just like lends itself to you wasting more of your precious time. And I keep saying precious time because
It
it's
is.
it's the one commodity, it's the most precious commodity we have.
Absolutely.
And procrastination is sabotaging like so many of your dreams, so many of the opportunities that you want to afford yourself, so you can take that next big step in your life, or complete that thing that's going to take you to the next thing. And yeah.
Yeah, well, we talked, at the beginning about the cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Dissonance. And I want to talk now about some of the cognitive biases that
Yeah.
lend themselves to our procrastination. And I know one of them, going back to school, right? There's like, okay, you have a test, you have a final coming up in 2 months, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I've got 2 months to do this, or maybe it's a paper to write. You got 2 months to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, oh, that's plenty of time. And then it's 1 month before you have to do it, and then it's a week, and you're like, okay, I can knock this out in a week.
Yeah.
And I've have in the past gotten to the point where I've tried to write a paper, and I have. And this is
Mm.
before ChatGPT existed, so right. So I've written a
Yeah.
paper, a 10-page paper, stayed up all night cramming this 10-page paper in, or cramming for a final, when I would have been much better if I had started it off earlier. And that's from this optimism bias, right? And this
Mm.
optimism bias makes us think that the time available that we're going to be able to do this task pretty easily in the full time available, and then half the time available, and then a quarter, and eventually it ends up being the night before, and then you realize, oh shit, 10
Yeah.
pages or cramming for this final, that's a
Yeah.
lot, and you're not going to do as well as if you had done the full planning. So this
Yeah.
optimism bias is there, in that, oh yeah, I got this. I'm good enough to where I can cram it in the night before, or write a paper the night before. I'm definitely guilty of that. And then there's the pessimism bias, which
Mm.
if you
Yeah.
want to cover that, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's discuss like tasks and how we fail, and can pessimism bias. Like a task will fail and can discourage from starting it, right? So it's
Yeah,
like we just don't, we're not feeling our best self. We that could be the stress kind of creeping in, and just realizing that, like, I just don't have what it takes. So why should I even start?
yeah.
Instead of, like, I mean, part of I was going into my book right here, John, or one of the Gift of Adversity by Marcus Aurelius
Oh
Anderson,
yeah.
who came on the show, and I can't remember. There is something that is that's called I can't remember. Like, so it's the time, it's relationship between time, the task, and the time, and how much time we have to
Oh
complete
yeah.
that
The
task.
time the
And
time will always expand, or the task will always expand to fill the time allotted, something like that.
right, but also we'll also we'll kind of keep cramming it in. We'll be like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, and then we have, like, 5 days left, and it's like, oh shit, I really need to do this right now.
Right.
And yeah, so
And
I mean, also, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
uh, with some people, I know they perform better under pressure. There's times that I've
Yeah,
convinced
I
myself that I
agree.
perform better under pressure, and I'm like, you know what, I'll knock it out. I can knock out a better product if I'm in that flow state, in that zone, and if I can
Hmm.
concentrate on this paper, or concentrate on studying and nothing else for the next 12 hours. And
Hmm.
sure, I think there's some optimism bias there, but more often than not, if I had set up some more time for myself, or set myself up for success with more time, then indeed I would have succemism more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other bias that's there, as far
Yeah.
as
The
the
pessimism.
cognitive bias, yes, we talked about pessimism bias, and that's just assuming I'm going to fail. So why even start, right? I'm
Right.
assuming that, hey, this diet of mine where I want to lose 20 pounds, and I'm again speaking
Yeah.
anecdotally. This is not actually something that I'm doing, but hey, let's say I want to lose 20 pounds, but I've done diets in the past. I haven't succeeded, or I've lost that weight, and then I've got it back on. Why even do it, right? That's the other
Right.
pessimism bias. That's the example. But then there's the present bias,
Mm.
and we talked about this, that immediate gratification. What can we do right now to make us feel good?
Right.
That's gonna lend itself to procrastinating, like we talked about
Right.
before. That doom scrolling, or watching stupid reels. Man, I'll tell you what, I've
Yeah.
wasted so much time watching stupid reels on Instagram. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, when I could
Yeah.
have been doing something better.
Well,
So
it could also be like, if you're, a gym junkie, you go back to the gym instead of, like, doing that particular task. Or
Mm.
like, one thing that kind of present bias, it's like, I like to clean shit,
Oh yeah.
I like to organize my apartment. I like to have, things, clean and tidy. And, I see myself procrastinating. I'm like, I'm just refusing to start a particular task. And one of the things that I go to very often is this present bias. Immediate gratification over long-term rewards, can cause procrastination. So here I'm like cleaning stuff, and like I like putting stuff away, and then I'll go back and I'll even like, just adjust it a little bit more so it's like at the perfect right angle or the perfect like position, and it's just like it's like, it's like, I this procrastination, it just wakes up this present bias. And like for me, it's like I just, I just, I'll do all the dishes and put them all away. And then maybe I have a nice little, I love my little mop on my floor, my little, like, not a push, kind of not a push broom, but kind of like a Swiffer, but it's not a Swiffer. And
Swiffer.
I just love seeing, like all the dirt come off my floor. It's like, oh, look what I did, and it's like, I mean, immediate gratification. I have a clean floor, but it's just like I wasted more time
Right.
on something that needs to get done.
It does need to get done, but does that need to get done right now? And does the task that you're putting off, does that need to get done right now? Maybe realizing that your floor, yes, it needs to
Mm,
get done, but it's not something that needs to get done right now. And realizing
yeah,
that if you actually use that time to work towards the task that you're putting off, then you can do the cleaning of the floor anyway.
yeah.
There's a great example of this that I learned years ago when I was a scout master. I worked with the Boy Scouts.
Mm,
There's you take a jar and you fill it with sand, and the sand is supposed to represent the things that you want to do, not the things that you have to do, but the things that you want
mm,
to do. And then on top of the sand, you put small pebbles, and that's the things that are kind of in between the things that you have to do and the things that you want to do. And then on
mm,
top of that, you try to put larger rocks or larger stones.
mm,
And eventually, you can't put in all these stones, right, that you have.
yeah,
But then if you dump it all out and you start the other way and you put the
yeah,
rocks in first, those are
mm,
the rocks are the things that you have to do. So you do the things that you have to do first. Those are the rocks. You
yeah,
put those in the jar.
mm,
Then you take the pebbles, and the pebbles kind of fill in the gaps in between the stones. And then you take the sand and pour it in.
mm,
The sand is, again, what you want to do. You can fit way more in the jar doing it that way. And it's really that
mm,
way in life, is that if you do the things that you have to do first, then you actually reward yourself by doing the things that you want to do later. And it feels good in that you've got the thing that you have to do done,
yeah,
and
yeah,
now you don't have to think about it when you're doing the thing that you want to do. Because I find that too,
mm,
man. Quite
mm,
often, if I'm doing the thing that I want to do, in the back of my mind, the thing that I have to do is there anyway. And I'm going to enjoy the thing that I want to do more if that thing that I have to do, and I know I've said this
mm,
a whole bunch of times,
yeah.
is not in my mind.
Right,
So,
right. Well, it's almost like that whole win your morning, or the
yeah,
whole
eat,
concept of eat the
eat the
frog.
frog. Yeah,
Yeah, do the most difficult task first, and then you get a flywheel going. It's like, oh
right,
wow, you feel great about it, right? And then it's like, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And then you really have an accomplished day.
right.
And because like you started with the most difficult task, and you kind of moved that giant boulder, you moved all the energy that's around that difficult task. And then you have like this instantaneous hormonal reward, because you're feeling good about yourself. And then it's like, oh, what else can I do today? And I
Yeah.
probably would have had more of that day right now, John, if I would have went to the gym at 4:30 in the morning. So I'm not even thinking like, what I mean? I should have done that for the procrastination episode. But what I will do for everybody today is, after I get done with my workout, I'll be all sweaty. I'll post a video
There you go.
and I'll let you know how I feel. And I promise you that I'm not going to procrastinate and post it the next day.
And it better not.
But
Hey, you better hold up like a newspaper, or take a picture of your watch or
yeah,
something to
right,
prove
right,
that
right,
this
right,
isn't something that you did yesterday. Or
right. Yeah, all right.
do the
Good point.
Jocko Willing, like take a picture of your
Right.
watch at 4:30 with the date.
Yeah, that's what I don't wear. Okay, I'll take a screenshot and be like, hey,
There
here
you
I
go.
am, and I'll post it at the end. But like, and that's a big thing. It's like, I do the most difficult thing first. and maybe write down what those difficult things are, the things that are most challenging. Even as we're researching this, uh, Dwight D. Eisenhower has something called the Eisenhower box,
Yeah,
right, or
the
the
matrix.
Eisenhower matrix, right,
Yeah,
and it's just like a 4 quadrant box with an X and Y axis,
access,
ax-
access.
axis, yeah, I know. Right, and I wrote it on my wall because this is actually kind of cool. So
Oh, I
look
love
at my
that. Yeah,
blackboard.
man, I learned
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
years ago. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm messing up my geometry. So the x-axis is the longitudinal, right?
The
The long,
horizontal. Yeah,
horizontal. Yes. Okay. Right. It's urgent versus not urgent. On the bottom the bottom two spaces, and then along the y-axis, the upper axis, or the perpendicular axis, is important and not important. And that top left quadrant are those things that you can eat the frog with. You know what I mean? Like the things that you must do,
yeah,
and start doing those things right away. The other quadrants are, you can the other ones that are not so urgent but that are important. You can schedule those, that day, or maybe later in the week, or whatever the time frame is to get that complete. The stuff that's urgent and not important, you go out and delegate. Give it to somebody they're working with, and then a bottom quadrant that is not urgent and not important, just delete it,
yep.
and just don't do it.
And what's
Yeah,
funny about that Eisenhower matrix is that so many of us get wrapped up in the urgent but not important, and it's
right.
um,
Mm.
it's called the tyranny of the urgent, right? We like get
Mm-hmm.
wrapped up in everything that's urgent, whether it's important or not, and
Mm.
then end up forgetting the stuff that is important, whether that is urgent or not. That's why we
Mm.
procrastinate, because we assume that these papers that we have to write or these tests that we have to study for are not urgent.
Right.
We only
Right.
focus on the stuff that is urgent. So, yes, I love that matrix. That's
Well, that
that's a
that
fantastic one.
yeah, it's strong too, because and asking everybody out there who's listening or joining us right now in our wonderful community, it's like, what can you delegate? What can you take off your plate? And I have someone that comes in my house every month and cleans. Like, I don't like to, I like to clean the little things, but I don't like to get on the floor, or I don't like to, scrub, do the
Toilet.
tile in the bathroom, the toilet, you know what I mean? And I'm fortunate that I can pay someone to do that. And like, I
For
love this
sure.
woman. She's been coming to my place for like, God, like 8 years, 10 years or something like that. And we have a great time. And, I'm glad that she's here, and this is what she loves to do. And I gladly pay her for it, but I don't have to worry about it. It's not taking me 4 or 5 hours to clean my apartment on whatever day of the week that I choose to do that. It just, I show up, and I prioritize my day so I can make that extra money. So, I can pay someone to clean my place.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that, if you are out there and you're starting a business, or you're swamped in your business, or you're just, overwhelmed by all the different things that you need to do on a regular basis. It's like, what can you delegate? John and I have a VA that we really, shout out to Leo, who we really love working with. And he loves doing the stuff that we give him. And I love giving the stuff that we give him, because like, I don't, it's not, another 10 or 11 or 8 hours of my week that I get to
Yeah.
do this. I get to, he enjoys doing it. We love working with him, and, we delegate those tasks. But
Yep.
like, what can you delete? And that's why, I do enjoy social media, John. I know we keep coming back to this, and I think we, honestly, we can't have enough of a conversation about it, because of how incredibly, what a time suck it is, how incredibly destructive it is for, how we feel about ourselves, and how we see our place in the world, and how much procrastination it creates, and how
Relationships with
much stress
others.
and relationships and shit. Yeah, it's so much, but I can delete, almost all of that from my day, and I know there is like a, we have, but how about engaging with it purposefully?
Mm-hmm.
We're launching that meditation course starting on June 23rd. And I want to promote it. I want to market it. So I went up on the roof today, and I shot a bunch of videos at the sunrise,
I
because
thought you
you
were
know what
gonna
I
say.
mean?
I thought you were gonna say
You know,
that you went up on the roof and you shouted it up from the rooftops. We are doing a
yeah,
meditation course.
yeah, take the meditation course. Yeah, just like a bunch of random New Yorkers. Nobody's fucking awake at 6. It's at the
I
sunrise
think
anyway. It's the
I think
quietest
you should
time in the
start
city.
doing that.
Yeah, I will, but I'm gonna get arrested. And be like, oh, why? Oh, the cops show up. I'm like, hey, glad you guys came to the meditation class. They're like, no, dude, you've been disturbing the peace. It's like I was trying to help people. Anyway,
uh, well, hey, let's get into the next
yeah.
segment, right?
Okay, sorry.
The
Yeah.
situational factors of procrastination. But before we do that, hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to some of our sponsors. Give a special thank you to our MTM Forever sponsor, Karambit Tactical Knives.
Yeah.
Found exclusively on karambit.com. That's Karambit, karambit.com. These knives are more than just tools. They're a testament to precision and reliability. As a small business owned by a Navy SEAL veteran, every Karambit knife is rigorously tested and approved by the best. Whether for self-defense or everyday carry, Karambit knives are the ultimate choice, boasting over 50 brands and models to suit your needs. Thank you to Karambit Tactical Knives for being a sponsor of MTM and for being our steadfast partner in personal safety and preparedness. Again, learn more at Karambit, Karambit.com. And also, hey, Will and I have been using this new delicious hemp protein. It's agoge.
Agoge.
No, yeah, hey, we're spelling out all our sponsors. Agoge, that's Agoge. Agoge, that's right. And if you've ever watched 300, Agoge is, the name is kind of a hat tip to 300. Anyway, agoge is a revolutionary new hemp protein delivering exceptional nutrition for your wellness journey. Check them out at agoge.life. And now, if you would like to be a sponsor like Karambit and Agoge, please text MTM to 33777 or head to mentalkingmindfulness.com to check out your options for sponsorship. Now,
awesome.
Coming back to the
situational factors of procrastination.
What is causing, like, this is the mindfulness piece, right? What is causing your procrastination? Quite often, if you sit down and you meditate, you practice some level of mindfulness and you do that introspective work, you can see what it is that's causing this procrastination. And asking those questions, what's stressing you out? Quite often that's what's causing the procrastination is stress. Okay, what's stressing us out, and then why? And funny enough, coming back to your comment about cleaning your apartment, quite often the distractions can be our environment, right? Not like a messy desk or a messy apartment.
Big time.
We can't get our minds right because our environment sucks. So that's a couple of things is identifying what's stressing you out and why. So ask yourself those questions, then sit quietly to kind of identify what the answers are, and then work through that. That might help you. So maybe cleaning your apartment isn't necessarily a distraction, Will. Maybe it is actually helping you to get focused. It's just my 2 cents.
No. I mean, I thank you, John, for that compassion. But I must say, I think it really is. It is a procrastination for me because, honestly, 90% of my stuff is organized. You know what I mean? And 10%, do I really need to do that little 10%? Can the dishes wait? Until the end of the day. Instead of doing them right now when I have. Yeah, I know. Seriously, it's ridiculous, but it's but that's the more that I am stressed about taking on a particular project or starting, something that maybe I'm actually struggling with, so if have a particular project that, that just has a lot of moving parts and something that, I'm just a little amiss as far as okay, what's the next step? That's when I kind of go to cleaning. Or maybe you're listening out there and that's when you go to the gym, or maybe that's when you, start, doing the, the doom scrolling that we said already 12 fucking times in this episode, because that's what people do, and then just sitting, just get to the work, sit down, for 5 minutes. And then, this is Mel Robbins. She wrote a book, I guess the 5-minute rule or something like that, I think it's called. If you just whatever task that you want to do or whatever you're procrastinating on, what if you just set a timer for 5 minutes and sit down and start that task for 5 minutes? And the research has shown that if you take that 5 minutes and you finish that 5 minutes on that one particular task that you've been procrastinating on, you have an 80% greater likelihood of actually continuing with that task for another hour or several more minutes. And again, John, you get that win. And I
Right.
think that's a big part of procrastination. Like this is what we'll say. This is Men Talking Mindfulness World. What is your first win that
Yeah.
you can create? Small win, big, small win. What's the small win? Small is all. It starts with one little ripple, one little drop of water of wind into the puddle of, of the work that needs to get done. And how does that take you to the next wave, to another wave? It gets a little bigger, and all of a sudden, like, you're in that flywheel, you're in the flow, and you're just starting to stack those wins. You're starting to stack all those hormones that come with winning, and next thing you know, it's like that task is complete, or you
Right.
have blown past the obstacle that has been creating that procrastination.
Yeah. And we've all heard, or many of us have heard, Admiral McRaven's famous speech about making your bed,
Yeah,
and start by
yeah,
making your bed, right? If you want to change the
absolutely.
world, start by making your bed. But I'll go
Mm.
back even earlier than that. What's the first procrastination that so many of us do in the day? And that's coming back to Mel Robbins.
Mm.
The first procrastination that so many of us do every morning is we hit snooze on our alarm clock,
Oh yeah,
right?
fuck snooze.
That snooze is a procrastination button. You had a plan to get out of your bed at 6:30, and you hit snooze, and then 6:39 rolls around and you hit it again. You're convincing yourself that by getting up a little bit later, you're going to feel better. Well, Mel Robbins talks about this in several ways. One, she talks about, I think she calls it sleep inertia or something to that
Yeah.
effect, and that,
Mm.
like, by hitting snooze and going back to bed, quote unquote, for 9 minutes, that's actually going to make you more tired in the day, because you don't get into a full sleep cycle. You get this inertia, and it's like holding you back. The other piece that she talked about is, back in the day, she used to hit that snooze button quite often,
Mm.
but then she started acting like she was on the NASA launch pad, and she would count backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then on 0 she would launch herself out of bed. I mean, not aggressively, but she would get out of bed. And by getting out of bed like that, you win that first fight against procrastination. And
Yeah.
in winning that first fight, then you convince yourself, okay, I did this, now I can do that, now I can do this, and move forward through your day with these little wins. There's a lot to that. As you do that more and more, not just throughout your day, but in your life, you're going to start to feel as though you're winning, right? You're winning against this procrastination. So
Yeah. I was
I
thinking
love Mel
of
Robbins for that.
yeah. I was thinking of, like, that's what I should have done. So I was thinking of making the poster for this. It's a good poster, but I was like, I
I
should
love
be
it.
should say fuck snooze. Like, I mean, maybe that could be your mantra. And then that could be your first. I mean, that could be your first win. If you're a chronic snoozer, that could be your first win. It's just not hitting
Yeah,
snooze. And what if you just do that for a week?
right.
And again, that could be the first win. That could be the first drop. That creates that ripple effect that gets that flywheel going, for sure.
Yeah, and we're not saying you need to wake up with only 5 hours sleep or anything, but set your
Yeah.
alarm at a realistic time, and then
Right.
get up. Don't set
Right.
it for an hour before you plan on waking up.
Right.
Set it
Yeah.
for when you plan
Exactly.
on waking up, and then get up at that time. That's
Right.
going to be
Right.
a world of change in your life.
Well, you start making a deal with the devil every time you hit snooze.
Right.
And then you're also creating the habit of the rest of your day. It's like you're literally starting the whole habit of mañana, tomorrow,
Yeah.
later. I'll get to it at 3 o'clock. I'll get to it at 5 o'clock. I'll get to it at 7 o'clock. And then it's 9 o'clock. It's like, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow because I got to go to sleep. And then you just keep repeating like Groundhog Day, the same cycle the following day. Oh, I hit snooze again. It's like, oh, but like every time you hit snooze, John, every single time you hit snooze, you are not only making a deal with the devil, but you're also selling yourself short.
Yeah.
And you're also like giving yourself, you're saying right there in that moment, I'm not worthy. And
Mm.
you're also, and also I feel like there's a tremendous lack of self-respect as
Well,
well.
guilt too, right?
Guilt.
Like you hit
Yeah,
that,
all
you
that
hit that
stuff. Look at
snooze, and
those
you're like,
feelings.
oh, here it
Yeah.
goes again. I hit snooze yet again, and
Yeah.
you start convincing yourself that you're a loser.
Yeah.
You start defeating yourself. You're whittling away at your self-esteem. And
Right.
since we're talking about that, let's talk about
Yeah.
some of the effects of procrastination.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
We talked about the guilt that we feel, but stress and anxiety. I mean, that's a lot of what our show is about. Is is dealing with
Right.
mental health and how we can improve our mental health.
Right.
Well, procrastination is the exact opposite of that.
Right. Yeah.
Procrastination deteriorates our mental health,
Right.
and it deteriorates our self-esteem. It causes stress. It causes anxiety. It can even
Right.
cause depression. When you start looking at yourself, you're like, man, I'm such a loser. It can cause
Right.
depression. It's detrimental to your mental health. But where else is it detrimental?
Right. Well, I mean, also the mental health aspect. It's like, I say it all the time because, like, and I'm glad that some of you heard it 100 times. Is like we are emotional beings at our core, so we need to start to emotionally regulate and emotionally master and emotionally almost manipulate ourselves at the
Mm,
first moment of the day. So we get away from that stress, get away from that anxiety, and do not fall into depression. And what happens when we're in any one of those three states, or either all happening at the same time, right? We're high likelihood of procrastinating. We're not going to get anything else done.
yeah,
And then it becomes a self-fulfilling
it's just a
prophecy.
cycle.
We're more stressed. Yeah, we're more anxious, more depressed,
Yeah.
right? And what does it lead to in the physical realm, right? Because if we're feeling this way, it has a huge impact on our sleep quality as it is,
Oh yeah.
because like our mind is not calm. Our mind has not, we this incredible brain we have, this incredible machine that we have in this skull of ours, likes to get stuff done. It likes to, move on to the next thing, because like at our core also we're creative beings. And the more that we're able to create things, and creation is a process of doing things. And if we're not doing those things, we're not creating, and then we're just kind of, again, sitting on our own shit once again, and we're not feeling good. And that poor sleep and that stress, chronic anxiety, leading to more depression. What is that going to lead you to? I mean, there's all sorts of different chronic diseases that come from those three things: stress, anxiety, and depression. And we can see, like, I feel sadly, so many citizens in the United States, and then even across the world, kind of live with those three qualities way too often.
Yeah.
And then they just, then that's where how many other problems
Oh
come up
yeah. I mean,
from those.
you talked
Yeah.
about it affecting our sleep, and
Yeah.
as we've spoken about on the show before, when things start affecting your sleep, it affects your mood, it affects
Everything.
your
Yeah.
emotional regulation. It can affect your relationships, but what else can it affect that we've spoken about
Yeah.
on the show before is it affects what you eat, right?
Right.
Like
There you go. Yep.
I know when I am stressed out,
Stress eat.
I don't sleep well, and when I
Mm-hmm.
don't sleep well, then I stress eat,
Yeah.
which just not I'm not saying that being slightly overweight is necessarily terrible for your health, but as we get more and more over our
Yeah.
ideal weight, then that can be detrimental to our physical health. That can in turn be more detrimental to our mental health, and it's just like you said before, it's just this spiral that gets a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
So
That's it.
there's mental aspects to it, but there's also physical aspects, and then over and above that, what does it do for our performance at work, our academic
Right.
performance, right?
Right. Right.
So
All of it.
yeah,
All of it.
yeah. If you want to talk a little bit about that, man.
No, I mean, it's just going to affect our productivity.
Yeah.
It's like if we're not sleeping well, we're not our best self. We don't, we're probably waking up, in a state of stress. We begin to spiral out of control in a negative way. We're less resilient. That's a huge key here. Without
Mm,
that proper sleep and with that stress, we become less resilient.
great
So
point.
we,
Great point.
yeah, we fall prey to all those bad habits. All those little things that we're like, I can't go on my phone again. I'm not going to have that sugar. I'm not going to do, that one thing that I always do, but if you're less sleep, if you're sleep deprived, um, um, then like the likelihood of you, it's almost like a flywheel in the opposite direction. You just start
Yeah.
going downward, spiral, downward flywheel that you're just like, oh, and you're
Putting the
just beating
brakes.
yourself up and having, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't serve anybody, if you're, not your best self. And I
Right.
mean, it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve anybody you work with. It doesn't serve, humanity or even the earth, because you're just probably more destructive as well.
Yeah, and that, like you said, and it's something that may sound grandiose, in that you're affecting humanity,
Yeah, of course you are.
but of course you are, right? So
Right.
we've talked about the short term effects with procrastination, but the long term effects. What are the long term
Yeah.
effects on you, your family, right? You may start to develop that low self esteem, but then people start to lose confidence in you because you've continued to fail in meeting the obligations
Yep.
and meeting the
Yeah.
timelines. You start to have financial problems because now you're failing at work.
Yeah.
Maybe you
True.
get fired, and that affects your family, obviously. That increased, we talked about the stress, the anxiety, the depression, mental health issues that are caused by it, health problems. As
Yep.
you cause health problems in yourself, then you're going to have to go to the hospital more. You're going to put a strain
Right.
on. You're going to put a strain on the healthcare system. So I mean, I know that sounds grandiose, but it's in fact true if you break it down
Right.
to really the nitnoid details of the long-term effects on yourself and others around you. You do affect society.
Right.
You do affect the planet.
Yeah, and how you're not also contributing to,
Mm,
if you want to get something done, whether it's a creative pursuit or whether it's like you gotta, your work at your work. If you don't get that one thing done, then the next person can't do their thing, and you kind of like congest the whole system,
right.
or it's like, what, just by believing that you can do it, getting over that stress, getting over that perfection that we talked about earlier, getting over the internal bullshit inadequacies that we feel. It's like, take that first step, because that, particular thing that you're trying to create, that you eventually launch into the world, could go viral, or it could help, hundreds of people, dozens of people, thousands of people, millions of people. And then what kind of effect are you going to have? But if you're just wallowing in your shit, you keep hitting snooze, it's very unlikely to get it done, and it's definitely not going to get done very well when you do it, because
Right.
of just how you're feeling. I mean, it's just
Right.
a feeling realm, John, once again. And I cannot stress mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. If you want to begin to master yourself emotionally and just overall, it's like, get to meditation, get to this course that we're starting. I know I'm plugging. I don't give a fuck, because that's how, because it's really that important.
No,
It's like,
absolutely.
yeah. And if you don't sit with yourself and just realize, understand your feelings, understand the thoughts that come up your feelings, but also understand that we're in the last 2 weeks right now. And shout out to all the guys that are going through the first Men Talking Mindfulness spring course, very first one. And we're working with self-compassion right now.
Mm.
And the tools of self-compassion are powerful. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, man, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, we've talked about procrastination and what causes it. We've talked about
Yeah.
what it is, and then not only what causes it, but what it causes. But let's talk about strategies to overcome procrastination. One of those very first things is
Yeah.
having self-compassion, right? Having
Yeah.
that understanding of your underlying fears and
Yes.
anxieties, overwhelm, having that self-compassion. We talked about the stress and anxiety a little bit before, but
Yeah.
understanding where you are and where you need
Hmm.
to be and where you want to
Right.
be, and
Right.
then understanding that it's going to take some effort,
Right.
but to get to that understanding of who you are, where you are, where you want to be, etc. It takes some compassion work, some self-compassion, understanding that.
Yeah.
But over and above that, what are some other things that we can do to help mitigate procrastination? One of them is managing your time.
Yes.
Does managing your time look like doom scrolling? I'm not against scrolling on social media completely. I mean, I do it, and obviously Will and I, we benefit if you scroll and you see something from Men
Yeah.
Talking
Right.
Mindfulness, right?
Right.
But is that in your best interest? Again, is that what, have you already done everything that you have to do, and now this is something that you want to do? That I
Mm.
think is really understanding, what do you have to do, what do you want to do, and doing the things that you have to do first. So coming back to the Eisenhower box, the Eisenhower matrix, that's
Mm.
really helpful in time
Yeah.
boxing your day. Like Will said,
Yeah.
start your
Always.
day, or rather the night before, outline what the next day is going to look like. Time box that, break the goals or the tasks down into smaller digestible chunks, and maybe tackle those smaller digestible chunks through the day. But tackle the things that you have to do, the
Yeah.
uncomfortable things first. Then the environments, right? What can we do to adjust our environment? And what I mean by that is not necessarily the weather, right? I'm talking about where you
Right.
are, your desk, your space,
Right.
maybe cutting
Right.
down on your ability to tap into social media very easily. I at home, and I've talked about this before on the show, I
Yeah.
have this thing called the
Fuck.
brick. And I just
Mm.
touch my phone to that brick and it locks it down to where all I can use is the phone and text messaging. And that's tremendously helpful. But
Right.
um, that's being mindful. That's being mindful
Right.
about your environment, understanding how your environment affects your desire to procrastinate.
Yeah, I mean, a cluttered mind, a chaotic environment just creates or lends itself to a chaotic mind, right? An organized environment gives itself to an organized mind, and vice versa. If I naturally, one of the reasons I think, John, that my place is so clean, I know it. I used to be a fucking slob, man. Like in like my late 20s and early 30s. I remember my mother coming um, to visit me when I first moved to New York. I might have been in New York like 6 or 8 months. She walks in my apartment, John. It was just a fucking mess. And she starts to cry. She's like,
Oh,
"Oh my
wow.
God, I can't believe my son lives like this."
Wow.
So I was like, wow. I mean, that's how bad it was. Bad. It was really bad. And
Yeah.
I was living with a guy at the time who was a great dude, but we both were just like trying to figure out New York. We just moved here, like I said, 6 months ago, and we, and what really helped me, John, and this is for all of you out there, and this is, it came through the research. I found it, but also I've been using it for more than a decade. Because there was this calling when I was like in my mid 30s. I'm like, I got to get organized. I got to get organized. And one thing that really helped me to get organized is the 2-minute touch. Anything that I can complete in 2 minutes, I get done. And that goes from my dishes to making my bed to putting away my clothes to, organizing my shoes to whatever else it needs to get done. 2 minutes. And you just take those 2 minutes. And again, that's another little dopamine drip. Like, yeah, done,
Mm-hmm.
did that. That looks good. Everything's away. I don't have to go. I don't have a pile of little chores that I'm stacked up at the end of the day, which might end up being tomorrow or the end of the week when I get there.
Yeah.
But just getting those little 2-minute touches
And
done.
then
Yeah.
as that
Yeah,
stuff
John.
piles up, these 2-minute things, 2-minute things, 2-minute things that you don't do,
Right.
and they become overwhelming, right? Like, hey, can you do the
Oh
dishes
my
in 2
God.
minutes?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do them. I'm not going to do them. But you continue to pile on more dishes, and at the end of the week, now it's not one of those 2-minute things because
Yeah.
you've piled up so many dishes.
Yeah.
And now talking about shameless plugs, this is one of the things that I use, and I know it doesn't ever
Oh
show up
yeah.
at all. But this is my Scrum on the go board, and
Yep.
it's something that I created, and it is for sale on Amazon. Look up Scrum on the go. but hey, you write down all the things that you have to do, and then you put them in a backlog, then you put them in the do column, and then you have a doing column, and you want to minimize what's in that doing column, because when you have too many things that you're doing at the same time, it's called work in progress, WIP, WIP, work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to have only one or two things in that work in progress at the same time, and then as you move these things across the board, there is a tactile sensation that you enjoy, and then you get a little dopamine hit out of it. So shameless plug there, but that can really help to get you focused on what it is that you want to do and what you have to do. But then, another piece, and we've talked about this before in habit creation, and James Clear talks about it in
Atomic Habits.
I was going to say the Power of Habit. Power of Habit is I'm forgetting the Power of Habits author, but James Clear writes in Atomic Habits, about having some type of cue to actually do the thing, then some type of reward system. And I know there's more to it than just the cue and the reward, but at the end of doing the dishes, do something that's rewarding, something that's not detrimental, right? So like if you're dieting, you don't want to go, hey, I
Eat a fucking cake.
I didn't eat sugar all day, so now tonight I'm going to eat a gallon of ice cream. You got to do something that's not detrimental to the goal, but having that reward system in place, that can be hugely beneficial to countering the procrastination.
One thing that in Atomic Habits, John, and the reason he calls the book Atomic Habits, because you start really small, but those small things add together and they have a massive explosion.
Yes.
And so that's comes back to what we said earlier.
Yeah, and
Um,
sorry, the power of habit is, I think it's Charles Duhigg. That's I messed that
yes,
up,
yeah,
but
that sounds
yeah,
familiar. Yeah, that sounds right.
yeah,
Uh, well, let's just talk about a couple more things, John. And I'm so happy that you're reading Art of War, or no,
yeah,
sorry, The
man.
War of Art, The War of Art.
The war. Yeah, I have read The Art of War. Now I am
Okay, yeah.
reading The War of Art.
Great, great, great,
Yeah,
great book by Stephen
yeah,
Pressfield. And then when you're ready, because this came up with maybe our green room conversation with Colin Bai, our guest last week on brotherhood, and what was the whole thing we're
yeah.
doing,
Brotherhood,
John? Yeah,
mindfulness,
yeah,
and
yeah.
future
Anyway,
generations.
really fun episode. Like, God, that kid is smart, being only
Yeah, he
28
is,
years
man.
old. Like, goddamn,
See,
wise beyond his years. But the next book also is Turning Pro. I highly recommend, and I'm sure John will after he reads both of them. Highly, highly recommend them. But Stephen Pressfield, in a very succinct, very easy, very digestible, very in your face way, breaks down what gets in the way of our creating, like what gets in the way of the art that we're trying to bring into the world.
that
And
book. I mean,
yeah,
that book is one of the reasons we're doing this very episode, right?
mm, yeah.
We had a guest that wasn't able to meet today, so Will and
Mm.
I were like, "Hey, what should we do?" And I'm reading the War of Art,
Love
and
it.
the very
Love it.
first chapter. And I'm only in the first, or not chapter. He breaks it down into segments or something else, but in that very first section, he talks about procrastination, but he doesn't call it procrastination. He calls it resistance. Yeah, there we go. Let me bring
Yeah,
Will
yeah.
back up on the screen so we can see him. He's holding up the book, The War of Art. Break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles.
Yeah.
So but it doesn't just apply to creative battles. It applies to everything that we spoke about today. That
Yeah.
resistance. What is that resistance? And in the book,
Mm.
it says resistance will tell you anything to keep you from doing your work. It will fabricate, falsify, seduce, bully, cajole. Resistance is protean. I'm probably
Mm.
saying that wrong. It
Yeah,
will
that means
assume.
ever changing. But go
There
ahead.
we
Yeah,
go.
I
Oh,
had to look that
thank
up.
you, thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome.
You're the man. Thanks for stepping in. But
No
it will
worries.
assume any form. It's what it takes to deceive you. It will reason with you like a lawyer, or
Mm.
jam a 9mm in your face like a stick-up man. Resistance has no conscience. It will
Mm.
pledge anything to get a deal, then double cross you as soon as your back is turned. If you take resistance at its word, you deserve everything you get. Resistance is always lying and always full of shit.
Oof.
Like,
Yeah,
dude, I love that, man. I
yeah.
was like,
I'm just
okay, yeah, we
gonna.
have to do an episode on procrastination.
Yeah, yeah. Well, where we are, John. What do you mean
No,
procrastination?
no, I mean, that's what I mean. Is once I read that, I was like, oh, dude, Will, we got to
Oh,
do
okay, got it.
procrastination.
And I think it's interesting. I have the book here, and it just right on page 5. He talks about resistance greatest hits. I'm not going to go through those, but the next chapter, and these are really short chapters. Like, look at how like short that is.
Yeah.
This is one passage right there.
Yep.
That's it. I can't get
There
the
you go.
center.
There you
There it
go.
is. Right. Okay. Yeah. So he says resistance is invisible. Resistance is internal. Resistance is insidious, and like each one has a little passage. Resistance is implacable. Resistance is impersonal. Resistance is infallible. Resistance is universal. Resistance never sleeps.
Mm.
Resistance plays for keeps. They rhyme. Resistance is fueled by fear. Resistance only opposes in one direction. Fascinating. Resistance is the most powerful at the finish line. Think about that. All right. Resistance recruits allies. I think we can all relate to that.
Heck yeah.
Resistance and procrastination. I'll stop and read this. Procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. Instead, we say, I'm going to write my symphony. I'm just going to start tomorrow. He goes
Yeah.
on a little bit more. Resistance and procrastination, part 2. Oh, the two most pernicious aspects of procrastination is that it can become a habit, and we don't just put off our lives today. We put them off till our deathbed. Never
Mm.
forget, this very moment we can change our lives. There's never was a moment, and there never will be, when we are without the power to alter our destiny. This second we can turn the tables on resistance. This second we can sit down and do our work. And then a little bit further, he goes resistance in sex, resistance in trouble, resistance in self-dramatization, resistance in self-medication, resistance in victimhood, and it just keeps going on. Resistance and the choice of a mate. It's like it's always going to be there.
Right.
It's the resistance that leads to procrastination, that leads to all these feelings, or the feelings lead to all the procrastination. It's going to be there. It's just part of our life. But like, how do you overcome the whole idea of tomorrow and tap in to the idea that I'm worth it? I can do this. How do I start? How do I break it up into a small chunk? What's that first thing I can do? Can I set that timer for those first 5 minutes and work to get this one particular task done? And then just keep going. Can I time block my schedule? Can I even look a little bit deeper and look at the Eisenhower matrix and, what is needed? What can I delegate? What can I get rid of? What is absolutely unimportant? Right. And we have all these opportunities, John, and hopefully by listening to this episode, you begin to take that first step on the path. And I tell you what might also help. If you need somebody to hold you accountable, I've been working with a lot of men and women, but mostly men, to hold them accountable to the things they want to do in the life that they want to have. So reach out to me, and I would love to help you, because I'm working with a lot of great dudes out there, and it's an honor to work with them because they really start changing their lives, John. And it's a humbling experience as a teacher to witness this, but to hold that space and just to be like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, we're supposed to do this,
right.
It really makes a big difference.
Yeah, man. And while you were speaking about Pressfield and everything else there, one thing that popped into mind is there's a video, and I know this is not The Rock's, and I've spoken about it, I think recently, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. There's a video of him, and he says, there's a quote, and the quote goes, "One day or day one."
Yes.
One day being this time, this elusive time that more often than not never happens. Or are you going to start on day one? And
right.
That's the key, is starting on day one, starting right now. And
today.
What keeps us from starting today? Quite often it's, yes, procrastination, but it is, again, coming back to that fear of failure, that desire to be perfect.
The stress that might be fucking your life in some other ways. Yeah.
And there's, there's a saying with regards to entrepreneurship: if you wait until your product is perfect, then you've waited too long. And I mean, look at our show. If we had waited until we got here, not that where we are is perfect by any means, but if we had waited until we got here before we launched our show, we never would have launched. But what did we do? We started small. We started with what we knew, which was Instagram Live, and we've grown since then. Changed things completely, tinkering always with it, and we're making it better. But it will never be perfect. But the point is, nothing is ever perfect. We can work to get better all the time. But bottom line is just get started. So man, we've covered a lot today. So let's just do a quick recap here for our community. So we've obviously covered the word procrastination, defined it as the habit of delaying tasks, even when we know we'll pay for it later. And then we've had some laughs, obviously, along the way about how fear, anxiety, perfectionism, and that low self-esteem make us masters of what? Masters of avoidance. And what do we want to be masters? We want to be masters of our domain, not just masters of that avoidance. Then we talked about Mel Robbins and how she talks about how our brains, we trick ourselves into thinking that by delaying we're actually going to feel better, and that we talked about the different biases that are there: the optimism bias, where we think we have more time than we actually do; the pessimism bias, where we're like, oh well, I'm going to fail at this anyway, why even start? And then that present bias, where we're, hey, what is the immediate gratification that I can get, which is, social media or eating cake or whatever that immediate gratification is. So, and then obviously Will and we've shared our own stories about how procrastination has crept into our lives, having a lack of structure, constant distractions. That's productivity's some of the worst enemies that are out there. And then finally, we wrapped it up with what you can do to outsmart procrastination, if you will, with some time management hacks, the emotional regulation, that kind of thing. So, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to reflect on your own procrastination habits and then apply the strategies discussed today to overcome them. And on our social media channels, again, funny enough, ironic, hey, we're telling you to stay off social media, but we want you to get on quickly and invite you to share the stories of your procrastination and then how you've overcome it. Comment here on YouTube, and then we want to tell you about next episode real quick. Yeah. So next episode's going to be really good. We're going to be talking with Elise Michaels. And if you're not familiar with Elise Michaels, check her out on Instagram. She's phenomenal. She is a renowned men's mental health coach. And Elise will be addressing the topic of porn addiction. We're going to be discussing its impacts and the underlying causes. And so we definitely want you to tune in to gain Elise's valuable insights and practical advice. And then also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe leave us a review, and don't procrastinate. Do it right now. Go on,
right. There you go.
Subscribe, leave us a review. Do it right now.
Yes.
All right. So, Will, I'll turn it over to you for maybe our closing practice or any last comments that we haven't.
No, I think I've said enough. I think I've said enough. I guess it's a great episode, John. It's very important. And I'll also share this with your people. Like there's a way that we can get out of our way. And by listening to this episode and just taking one of these proactive tools, get proactive with your life, and know that you're worth it. I mean, that could be just the start. It's just to realize, like, yes, you have the ability, to make a difference in your life, and you have ability to take that first step that you've been procrastinating on. And just go and do it. Take those 5 minutes and just go and do it and watch what happens. It makes such a big difference just by starting. Start. Where can you start? Let's. I mean, we're already kind of running kind of late, John. Let's just do a few 3 breaths and if you're really procrastinating out there, what if you let's just do the stop method for a second, John. Yeah. Right. So STOP.
Yeah, there you
go.
We're
going to let's just stop everything, whatever you're doing. And just let's close our eyes if you like, and let's take a big inhale. All right. So T is take a breath in and let it go out. And for the purpose of this stop, we'll just do a couple more breaths. Inhale, right? Feeling the breath, feeling deep down into your belly, feeling that breath, right? Ground you into the earth. Exhale the breath and see if you can feel the energy of that downward movement of the exhale, grounding you deeper into this moment. And take one more breath in. All the way up. Fill. Hold that breath just for a moment and let it go out really slowly. Exhale. And if those eyes are closed, just open them for a moment and just observe situational awareness. Like, where are you? What did you want to do? What needs to get done? And then from this clear head, from this open mind, from, maybe you're feeling that you are worthy, then take the P, proceed with what's next. Take the P. That doesn't sound good, but you know what I'm saying?
I knew
right.
What you meant.
Yeah, take the piss. Yeah, take the piss and get out there and take that first step. As they say in England, are you taking a piss? Are you taking a piss? I'm like, yeah, I'm taking a piss. Anyway.
So again,
sorry.
Stop. S, stop. T, take a breath. O, observe. P is proceed, not piss.
Yes. Piss and then proceed. Top 2 P's. I don't know how to spell it. Anyway, hey, thank you everybody for listening. And hey, hit up mentalkingmindfulness.com. Join our meditation course starting on, it's a Sunday this time at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock Eastern time. mentalkingmindfulness.com to register or become a sponsor of the show. And thank you guys. Share this episode with your people out there. Subscribe to our Substack. We're really doing some great work, but we just, we want to be in more ears, not because we want to, for you, we do this. and for ourselves. But ultimately, without you, we don't have anything.
That's right.
So thank you guys for
Thank
being
you
here
all.
today.
Thank you all. And until next time, take care. Peace.
Peace, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.